Okay, boys and girls, let's talk about biological sex. How do biologists classify sex? I've heard many people online talking about sex and gender. The sex talk has often been centered around genetics, specifically the permutations of the 23rd chromosomes, including the common XX and XY and the various uncommon combos related to genetic disorders. I won't go into it here because I'm actually shifting the conversation somewhat, but Baring did an excellent video explaining the binary side of the argument with the help of none other than our favorite robust feminist, Fisty Splinters. I've linked to it in the description. When I saw the Riley Dennis video on this, I was moderately annoyed. But then I saw this blithering imbecile right here. A professor, no less. I swear, I started literally shaking. Seriously, listen to this guy.
Basically, it's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex, and I'm a historian of medicine. I can unpack that for you at great length if you want. But
what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
And I will say I have not been disappointed in some of my favorite YouTube truth seekers out there answering to these idiocies. However, what I haven't seen is a purely biological argument from a simple perspective of sex classification in animal species. This means using the definition of sex used in purely biological research. Too many binary proponents have been using medical diagnoses as biological sex, and that's not correct. That's a medical diagnosis. Medical diagnosis, as we all know, doctors get MDs, biologists get PhDs. They're scientists. Medical doctors are practitioners, and there is a very important difference. I would say it's undeniable that we humans are the most highly advanced species in the animal kingdom. However, we are still animals and must be subject to the same sexual classification criteria as the rest of Earth's fauna, for the sake of logical and literal consistency. So then, what are the criteria? The sex of a sexually reproducing species is determined solely by the size of the gamete or sex cells produced. The smaller is sperm and is always produced by the male of the species. The larger is the egg and is always produced by the female. This is the classification convention devised before we were technologically advanced enough to study genetics. This is evidenced by the fact that most bird species and some fish have effectively XX males and XY females. Male seahorses get pregnant because the female seahorse transfers her larger gametes, eggs, to a pouch on the male seahorse, where they are fertilized by the male's sperm. And the male carries the young throughout the as little as 3-week gestation period.
Let's start out with, what do you mean by male or female? Do you mean having XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes? Because actually, most people never have their chromosomes tested.
Okay, Riley, just for you, I'll explain it again. The biological assignment of sex in animals is based solely upon the size of the gametes produced by each sex. The sex that produces the smallest gamete is the male. The sex that produces the larger gamete is a female.
What do you judge their sex on? Chromosomes? Cells? Anatomy? Genitalia? Hormones? Outward physical appearance? And what if all of those don't line up?
Bitch, open your ears when I'm mansplaining to you. The strictly biologically based convention significantly simplifies the conversation. There is incontrovertibly such a thing as biological sex, based solely on the size of the gametes.
You might say, what about the ability to make babies? But the fact of the matter is that not all male or female people are capable of having babies. Some people are infertile, and some people have hysterectomies or vasectomies. You can't even place people in a box based on their ability to have kids.
Oh, but you can. And you did. You placed those poor people that can't have children in the box marked infertile, and the people who can in a box marked fertile. So don't tell us that we can't classify anything any way we want.
There was a case of a 46-year-old woman who had already had 2 healthy children, and she went to the doctor and discovered that she had both XX and XY cells in her body. Doctors believe that she had an intersex condition called chimerism, resulting from twins in her mother's womb merging to make her. If your definition of male and female is strictly chromosomal, then you would have to say she's male and female.
Okay, Riley, if we're going to talk about this, let's get it right. Chimerism is the fusing of 2 separately fertilized eggs in the womb. Much like the case of conjoined paternal twins, except the fusion happens early enough that the cell differentiation mechanisms work on both zygotes, meaning that the person, from the outside anyway, often looks perfectly normal. Other rare cases result in the development of true hermaphrodites, having both sets of reproductive organs fully or partially formed. However, to my knowledge, there has never been a case in which the individual produced both viable sperm and egg. If such a case were found, I would be happy, from a purely biological standpoint, to agree to a new designation of ambisex, meaning both male and female. In my research, the question of whether a true hermaphrodite could ever impregnate themselves and whether the offspring would be a clone popped up quite a lot. If both gametes produced are viable, there's no reason to believe that they could not combine to form a viable zygote. So yes, the person could create a child from only their sex cells. As for being a clone, that's not possible. Not only do we have to consider the randomization that occurs in the first meiotic division, but there's also the crossing over that takes place a few times on each chromosome in later meiosis. This in itself would preclude cloning through sexual production, but there is an even more important factor to consider. The genetic makeup of the male and female reproductive organs would be different, meaning the gametes produced would be different anyway. Genetically, it would be the same result as a brother and sister reproducing. Just a little FYI there. Okay, but back to Riley. I would concede a biological designation of ambisex for any individual that can produce both viable sperm and egg, if it were ever presented in a peer-reviewed case study. On the flip side, I would also concede a designation of non-sex for any person whose genetic condition precludes the production of viable gametes. Now I say genetic condition because birth defects, accidents, and surgeries, which you spectrum warriors love to bring up, are external factors that affect the reproductive capacity of people, not their innate genetic capacity to reproduce, which is the focus of biological sex determinism.
Biologists who study sex determination agree across the board that sex is a spectrum, and that making people check male or female on a box is reductive and inaccurate.
Okay, I tried. I really tried with you. I doubled the options for you. Male, female, both, or neither. But that comes nowhere close to a spectrum of designations. I will grant you that there is a spectrum of physiological manifestations within each sex, but that's as far as anyone with even a mild IQ is willing to go. I'd also like to see the citation for the across-the-board consensus you're claiming here. Of course, that statement probably is true, since no self-respecting biologist would bother studying sex determination, an established convention since before we had electricity. Only a self-lobotomized ideologue with a biology degree would pursue such a fruitless endeavor.
Sex isn't as simple as male or female, and the idea of a biological sex is often used to undermine the validity of transgender people's identity.
Sorry, kiddo, you're just wrong here. Biological sex is as simple as male and female. You can reproduce by either contributing a sperm cell or an egg cell. That is the biological purpose of sex determination, reproduction. There is no other sex cell that can be used for sexual reproduction. Therefore, there is no third sex, and by no means is there a spectrum. I went all middle ground on you by conceding the both and the neither, but that's as far as it goes. Biological sex is a binary, period. I will be back later to talk gender very soon. Until then, someone please make sure Michael Rowland sees this video. I would have put some of his jabbering in here too, but I love you guys too much to torture you like that. Plus the fact that the sound of his whiny voice makes me furious. I'll sacrifice for you, but I'm not ready to go to that level yet. Well, before I get back to digging around for the truth, I should really thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please subscribe, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and leave a comment. If you didn't, please leave a comment and tell me why. I recognize I'm not perfect, and I gladly welcome any feedback. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Those links are in the description, as are all the links for the sources that I use in the making of this video. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you next time, here in the middle ground.